Hello YouTube. Today's going to be an interesting topic. I want to talk about what it's like to be like a drifting judge. This is Will Parsons. He drove in Lone Star Drift, he drove in Nopi, he drove in D1GP, he drove in Formula D, and he's driven all around the country and stuff, including in Japan with me. So he's been around the block for more than almost 20 years. Almost exactly 20 years, isn't it?
Something, yeah.
So 20 years of drifting, and to start off this whole interview, he's now a judge at Klutch Kickers, which is a high level of competition with crazy cars. He has to make difficult decisions. But before we talk about this, I just want to state that it would be inappropriate for him to say anything bad about the series that he judges in or things like that. You know, we have to remain tasteful and everything else. So I just want to state that he loves his job, all these different things. He's not like, we're just chatting about things. So I always want to make sure, like when somebody might think it's controversial or something else, that we're very clear about all these things. So you're an influential person in drifting, your opinion matters, all these things. So you want me to talk to you about anything in particular? You just want to start riffing about what it's like to be a judge? I mean... You're like, shoot me now.
Like, judging is very interesting. It's very technical, and like, I don't think a lot of people that compete understand like how hard it is to make calls based on what you're seeing on the track, from where you're at on track and what camera angles you have. And everybody has kind of a different opinion on what is good and what is bad. And ultimately, you're trying to pick, you know, who's the best driver in a given battle. It's real tricky, and sometimes I feel like it's too specific. I don't know. It's changed a lot too over the years. Judging has, just in general.
Judging definitely has. Back in the day, you could make huge mistakes, but if you're exciting and had big angle and things like that, you would win. Nowadays, it's much more of a deductive system where if someone makes a mistake, they lose because the driving is getting to such a high level. You want to say something about that before I move on?
Yeah, no, it's just, yeah, so you're watching runs sort of, sometimes it feels like you're just looking for mistakes and not looking for good things at times. But ultimately, I think we get the calls right. It's just very difficult.
But the call is right would be different in each series.
Right.
So like say Klutch Kickers, Formula D, Drift Masters, D1. D1 just has a judging system based upon telemetry data off of a little DOS system, I think they're called. It's like a little drift box, and it measures yaw and angle and speed and all these different things. And it creates a very different like dynamic or like look for the drifting in their series now. Yeah. D1 looks like nothing like it did 20 years ago. The cars are drag racing through corners and then adding a bunch of angle all at once. They're doing a lot of different things. Formula D has its own flavor because it's manually judged. Klutch Kickers is very, like, the cars are crazy on teeny tiny tracks.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very difficult thing, especially because they don't seem to have tire rules. You want to talk about the differences in drifting, and the judging often in these series is making the whole drifting scene turn into something. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
The types of builds are very heavy for Formula D. You know, they're not super lightweight, crazy cars. D1 is crazy drift, like gripped up.
Yeah, and so like at Klutch Kickers, we're starting to see where people are building cars to take advantage of the relaxed rules. Like there's rules on everything, but you can run whatever tire you want. There's no restrictions on that. There's no restrictions on weight. I mean, still, it comes down to driver skill at the end of the day. We have a lot of people do well with low power. To a point, car does come into it, but again, most of the very talented drivers are in the very good cars, so it's, I don't know, some of that is what's happening. I don't know, it's crazy how much seeing drivers come to Klutch Kickers that were in Formula Drift and aren't anymore, come to Klutch Kickers and start to like kind of thrive in competition again has been really cool. A lot of drivers that have cars that don't really have a place other than like Formula Drift. There's not many competitions that you can take some cars of that caliber to and have a good time, like and actually compete with people. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, let's get really specific now. Explain to me how the points for qualifying work. You have 100 points. How do they add up? What are they for?
So we do 40 points for style at Klutch Kickers, 30 points for line, and 30 points for angle.
Okay. So there's 40 points for angle and 30 points for style and 30 points for what?
40 points for style,
yeah.
30 for angle, 30 for line.
Okay, so line. So line is the least important thing, basically.
Like
because,
line and angle, yeah.
Okay.
But
so what is angle, or sorry, what was the 40 points again? Sorry.
Style.
Style, yes.
Style.
So if style is subjective, what are you judging for style? What makes it?
So for me, like I'm the style judge this year, mainly flashy driving, and I look for a lot of commitment. That's a really big part of my score. I generally watch the whole run and then I'll watch the replay and get a little bit more specific on watching the replay. Watching it live, I base it on throttle commitment is a huge part of my score. Throttle commitment and commitment to the line that the car is on. You know, that always looks the most stylish to me. If someone isn't lifting off throttle and is completely committed to their transitions to where you can see that if they make any kind of correction or lift off throttle, they're just going to fly off the track. Those are the most exciting runs that...
Okay. So it's not about big angle for excitement?
I mean, big angle plays into it too. But for me, like the actual degree of angle doesn't matter as much as running as much angle as you can to run the maximum speed at the same time.
Okay.
So, you know, basically whatever angle you can put your car at to be full throttle with speed where you're not making any adjustments. So some cars that's going to be more, some cars that's going to be less.
I was just thinking in my head, it seems like style's made up of commitment and angle and some other things, but if somebody had a baller run and a lot of angle, they could get 40 points for style and or angle if it's like forced swing, but they could get an additional 30 points off of angle itself, making angle or, you know, like just full throttle angle commitment almost for 70 points and the line being very low on the totem pole.
Right.
Do you think about that at all?
Yeah, a little bit. And that kind of, sometimes the scores are a little confusing to people with their qualifying laps, and that's a big part of it is cars can have a perfect line and not do good on style, and then their kind of style and angle are hand in hand. You can get a really low style and angle score, but get a really high line score. And that's why I think Formula Drift, they changed their scoring system either this year or last year, so it's more line heavy. So the line plays a lot more important role in FD.
Do you know why they did that?
I think just for the reason you're saying.
Okay.
And a lot of the cars in FD, the whole field is running with a lot of style and a lot of angle. There's not as much variance between the cars and what they're doing on track. They're all, for the most part, pretty equal. I mean, I've seen it this year. Lots of people have won that, you know, maybe years past you would think like, oh, that guy's lower power or something, but the cars are all very similar build and speed wise. So, in Klutch Kickers we have a lot more variance, so in my mind, like, style and angle should be higher, or style should be higher and angle and line should be the same. Like,
you just want to be the most important judge.
No. Well, I did angle last year.
You're like, I am the most important.
Yeah. No, we all play a big role. And in qualifying, it's not super critical if you get a score, you know, you're going to get into the competition too.
So how do you then go for, that's single runs for qualifying. How do you judge tandem?
So in tandem, it's just we each watch the run and look for different things. Like, we're not looking for different things. We're just watching the run and basically interpreting it individually and making a call for what we see. So we're looking at all three categories in the tandem battles. So for lead car, we're all looking at line, angle, style. Follow car, we're looking for proximity, aggressiveness. You know, the line also plays a role for the follow car to be perfect. We do put a lot of emphasis on the lead car doing the line correctly. Braking zones has played a huge role this year. A lot of the controversy that we've had is surrounded braking zones. So that's, we've kind of been talking about different ways that we can make that. It's hard to make things rigidly defined because as soon as you do, then people point out like very specific things, but the runs are so dynamic that it's difficult to make a black and white rule because so many different things happen. I mean, just in drifting. Yeah. Somebody might do something that if you have a black and white rule, it might be breaking the rule, but it didn't actually cause anything in the run. The rule was put there to prevent, if that makes sense. So I don't know.
How do you think judging is going to evolve in the next couple years with what you're specifically doing? What are you looking forward and you want to change?
I would like to make it less like nitpicky and specific and a little bit more just general feel of the run. But that's very difficult to do because people want hard things that they can look at and try to make changes based on. So like some drivers want my specific score that I gave them, and then they want a breakdown on why they didn't score higher.
You mean tandem or for qualifying?
For qualifying. And then in tandem, they want a very specific breakdown too on the battle in general. So they want to get really, really specific with what they're doing. And the drivers are so good now that it actually makes a difference. You tell a guy to do something, in qualifying, and they'll change it on their next laps, and you can see the change. One guy, Josiah from FDF, he made a qualifying lap at one of the rounds, and he came up and wanted to know his specific score and why, his score was lower than he thought it should be. And then I explained to him, what I was looking for specifically, and he immediately changed it. And then the next round is scored way higher for me. And the drivers are so good that they can make tiny changes like that. But qualifying is always rough, and I wish there was an easy way to make that eliminated. I don't think there is.
I eliminated it, but
yeah.
It's controversial, and we don't have big money for grabs.
Well, and
it's a whole season, so
it's also difficult too, because if you eliminate it, sometimes you end up with very good drivers battling in the first battle of the competition.
Yeah.
And that makes for a bad show in the long run, because a lot of people, spectators and people watching online, may not be that interested in the first couple rounds. They want to see like the very good battles at the end. And qualifying does that. It usually stacks all the good drivers that are doing really well in a specific layout at the top. So then you go through the whole bracket and they all end up at the end.
Speaking of that specifically, the spectators watching and like people with the battles and everything else, do y'all think it's a good idea to eliminate all 5-minute breaks and try and speed up the competition a lot? Because I know a lot of I was at Formula D recently, and it took so long to get to the last battles, it was ridiculous. Sometimes you're there for 30 minutes and you might watch 3 battles.
Yeah.
Do y'all think about that as judges at all? Or do y'all have any input in the series with that?
We do have a little bit of input, but really it's a thing I think you have to have. And it makes good drama for the stream. The people in person, it's kind of rough.
Yeah.
We've tried ways. We've actually done really well at the last couple rounds, just going through battles really quickly. We did actually have a round that was amazing where the first day wasn't amazing. It was terrible with the weather. And so the second day, there was a storm coming in. So we did no practice, went straight into the battles in competition, and actually the drivers weren't able to warm up and get into their own heads, and actually a lot of them did better than they had been doing. And I think there's something with that, with practice, and they're thinking about changes, and they had no options. They just had to go into battles, and it was actually really cool. We also try to do battles while 5-minute calls are happening, so we keep going, but some things inevitably take time. Like the last round, we had the nitrous explosion, and the ambulance had to leave the track, and I think a lot of people were confused on why it was taking so long, and we were waiting for the ambulance to come back to the track before we could start sending battles again. So there's some things that just are always going to take time. And eliminating 5 minutes, a lot of 5 minutes don't make it, but the ones that do, I feel like it's necessary to have it.
Yeah. Driftmasters got rid of it with the Red Bull stuff and everything else, and they just pushed through. And people keep saying that's, the best series to watch visually and all that stuff, which is subjective. But
I can see it
they're kind of leading the way in some ways. I like to see how each, individual series changes rules. I was just helping over in Ireland judge, and it was a completely deductive thing. If you've seen how they do that with the keypads, and they only subtract It's all numeric. The judges don't have to do anything in their head. You know, there's yeah. Anyways, I was gonna say that was very interesting. I like seeing all the differences, especially because like I got rid of qualifying forever ago. I was like, this shit's boring. Goodbye. Yeah. And that's the only way we can run 2 series in one weekend. You know, is cleaning up a problem for myself, and not to make it about me, but I was going to say we just change things by deleting things and trying to make the show as quick as humanly possible. I think for next year I might like go ahead and delete all 5-minute calls and everything else, because I just want people to have fun. And I don't know if you saw, we did MSR, we did our last Pro-Am event, I think, our Formula D Pro-Am event, well, it was actually a licensing event, which we don't do anymore. And because everybody had to change tires every battle basically, and they were really slow at it and other things, it took literally 3 hours to do like a top 8. It was crazy how slow they are. Is that a problem with Klutch Kickers?
It gets that way, like top 4 is usually when it takes a long time. We still do a 3rd place battle too, so that gives the final battle time to get ready. But when everybody gets to the top 4 and then battle to find the finals, then it takes a minute for the people that battle for 3rd place. They have to get their cars ready and cool down. And eliminating 5 minutes would speed up the show, but also some really good drivers will have something very simple that they can easily fix. They just have to pull off the track. So it's kind of give and take. Yeah. You might be eliminating like
at the end of the day, though, I think about the fairness of that, but what the drivers really want is to put on a show and to be famous and do these things. Right. And you can only make the show bigger by making it better for the spectators, and if it's better for the spectators, it's automatically better for the drivers. Right. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah. I can see that, but it's like if you have a really famous driver and his belt comes off, for instance, like that happened to LZ at one of the rounds, they can fix that really easily. So then by not letting them fix it, then they're just...
Well, I totally understand that. There's a downside and an upside to everything. So what do you think the biggest controversy is with judging that you see?
The biggest is
because there's always controversy when you're a judge.
Yeah, it's full
the worst part about judging.
I don't know. It's usually all the controversy usually surrounds people not understanding what we're looking for. Like that's at the end of the day, the specific things that we're looking for, and we have set up on track. That's for us. It's been braking zones this year. Like all the controversy at Klutch Kickers has been around braking zones. Because braking zones are subjective, and how much you brake or slow down. I say braking, but they're momentum zones. Yeah, where you have to decelerate the car to stay on track, and we've had contact in those zones, so those calls are always the hardest.
Is that a problem, Si? The wheel? No? Okay, keep going.
But yeah, so it's always that. Okay. That's a very controversial, like...
Do you think that's a solvable thing just by writing rules in better, or it's always going to be subjective because obviously you can press on the brakes harder or less and everything else?
This is the thing that comes back to making like a black and white rule, so I don't really think there's a way to avoid the controversy surrounding it. We try to tell drivers to be prepared as in the follow position specifically. Like, this is an area of the track that the lead car is probably going to have to make an adjustment in speed to stay on the track. They're going to have to slow down, so you need to be prepared for that mentally. But if you make a black and white rule, or you paint a line on the ground, it just gets extremely specific. And then we're spending a lot of time trying to look at replays to see like, oh, did he cross the line? Like, did he have speed? It gets very difficult. So I think it personally is going to have to stay subjective, even though that makes it confusing sometimes for spectators.
Drifting is still fairly early days, even though it's like 30 years on. Do you think that there's anything that you can do to change drifting from a judging perspective? Because I think there was a bunch of people that, like, I remember talking to Chris Jager. He had a bunch of ideas about drifting specifically and how to change things. He was one of the first people I really talked to that talked about how, like, you must shit can a lead driver if they don't have a perfect like lead lap, because it's not fair for the follow guy. And for many years, if the follow guy did a great job, he won, even though he could then do a bad lead lap, which would let the other guy not show off. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many little tiny things in judging that different people could put their hands on and touch. Just like the person in D1 that came up with the DOS system with the computer stuff, or, you know, whoever else, Drift Masters is doing their thing. Or it seems like RDS, I was talking to Luke Fink the other day, and he was talking about how aggressive that series is because their judging is like just go balls out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when you could have a huge amount of influence over drifting if you came up with a bunch of specific rules that you're in a position to like put in place. Do you think of anything like that?
I do. I come up with ideas a lot. I haven't exactly figured out a way to implement them yet. But
what are those ideas?
I can't think of them specifically right now.
Okay.
There's been a lot of them. They're all minor things though, nothing insane, like earth-shattering, just little specific details about different things that you can change to like direct drivers to having better laps.
We were talking about clutch kickers and tire sizing and like how that is becoming its own thing. I think Adam LZ won multiple rounds this year, correct?
Yes.
And then, so he was on big tires. What is the average tire size that now wins one of those events with the average weight of the car, do you think?
It's hard to say specifically, because I think Nate won the last round, Nate Hamilton. And I can't remember what size he's running, but I don't think it's as large as some of the other cars are running. I want to say he's on like a 285, maybe a 265, but I'm not sure. There's a variance in tire size still. A lot of the FD cars run the same tire that they run in FD, so they're bigger, you know. I think Adam's on a 315 or something.
Like a 315/40, which is way bigger than you think it is, too.
It's huge.
That is a real, it looks like a 345.
And then Naren's car is extremely fast, and he's running like a GT radial tire, and I think it's like a 295 or something like that. And it's pretty big also, but there's still a wide variety.
And are those cars lighter than Formula D cars?
No, I'd say.
How much do you think Adam LZ's E36 weighs?
I think he's probably like FD weight.
You think it's like 3,000 pounds or 3,150?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, maybe like right at 3,000, maybe 2,900.
Okay.
I don't think he's gone to extreme lengths to lighten it. I could be wrong, I don't know. But that's just watching it move and stuff.
What do you think the future of that series is? Do you think? Oh, sorry, I should state something. Do you think the builds are going to get more outlandish? Like I have this circle track car that I thought I was going to bring out and have fun with. I was going to have it here. Like thing is like 2,400 pounds. There's a path to get that car down to 2,200 pounds because it's still iron block, iron heads, all these different things. People could be building crazy cars with the 335 on the back. Do you think people are going to build crazy stuff like that?
I think so, like slowly. Like Taylor Ray, I don't know what his car weighs, but he built a car to compete with. And I think,
Corvette?
Yes, and I think he did his setup based around the rules, so I think he's taking advantage of the weight rule for sure.
I thought his Miata would take advantage of because he could build a 2,100 pound Miata with 315s on it.
Yeah.
Probably be a 2,200 pound Miata by the time you get those tires on it, but you know, like how could anybody compete with that? Which would be rad, by the way. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I absolutely think he should. That thing would be a little tiny monster truck doing wheelies.
Yeah, and it was already a monster. I think he's limited a little bit with that car, specifically on wheel size and tire size. Just to
Sawzall that baby.
Them. Yeah.
I mean, you could.
Yeah. I think he just wanted to try something different too. It makes good content.
It's interesting he went to that Corvette and everything, because I actually thought, especially at the previous track, the Emerald Coast, that Miata would be almost unbeatable there, because when I drove there, it was all about just getting the dang transitions fast as you could, so you could get on the gas and get to the next corner. The longer wheelbase cars almost can't get transition fast enough to pick up the throttle and go nuts. That Miata, if it was gripped up more, would just be like insane there.
Well, he did really good. So he won around, and I think he did really good for all the driving at Emerald Coast for sure. It definitely worked great. And he works good even at the Freedom Factory. But
so the next 5 years, what's the evolution of it?
I think it's just going to keep growing bigger and bigger.
For Klutch Kickers?
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to do more tracks?
I think so, but I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I know they love Florida, so they want to stay Florida specific. And I believe that Cletus wants to have more events at his venue, so there's no telling really.
Interesting. All right, as we finish this up, is there anything you'd like to say about judging? I could say something and lead you into it if you want, or you can just end it and not hear my last suggestion.
Go ahead.
My last thing, and we buried this at the end, is what is it like to be a human judge? And what is it like to have your friends mad at you, or, you know, like you're at a drift event, and normally while you're at a drift event, outside of competition drifting, when you're at a normal jam event, you go to a bash event or you do something, it's only pure happy vibes, right?
Right.
You put yourself into the position now that you get a lot of negative feedback, and a lot of negative like feedback specifically from the people that are your friends before. What is it like to be a human and be a judge at the same time?
It's been tough this year. Normally it doesn't bother me, but it's been bothering me this year because it is very difficult, because people will be friendly just like you're at a bash event or just, you know, hanging out when you get there. But then when a call doesn't go their way, or they think that you treated them unfairly, some people's reaction is not to come talk to you like you're a person, a human person. Their reaction is to treat you like you're an employee or something, you know, like you're a waiter that didn't bring them the correct meal, and they get extremely upset about it. Which, like, I would never treat somebody badly for that either. So it's, I don't know, it's caught me by surprise a few times.
Do you think you can continue with that kind of thing and like suck it up internally, or do you think it kind of like hurts your soul, since those are drifters that you respect and want to be friends with, and like, you know, it definitely, do you think, makes it a hit on you? Yeah,
it definitely takes a toll for sure. And I've learned ways to kind of cope with it. So it's like a balancing act of, do I want to keep being in this position? Because I enjoy it, and I do enjoy getting the perspective that I get of the competitions and being able to analyze it, because I enjoy that, like the way my brain works. I just like analyzing drift battles. Like, I watch Formula D's live stream and do the same thing. I watch the runs, look at the calls, and kind of think about their mindset and what they're looking for. So I don't know, it's hard to say exactly what I'll do, but it does take a toll. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make the right call, and you can only have one person win. So if you have a 64, you know, a 64 driver bracket, like, that's 63 people that are not going to be happy. So.
Has anyone ever bribed you successfully?
Never.
No, I'm joking.
Nobody's tried.
Nobody's tried?
Not to date.
Oh, I have people bring stuff up to me and like, oh, do you want lunch, Aaron? And I'm like, what? Why are you being nice to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not yet.
Okay, as we finish, is there any judge that's super influential that you think is amazing in the world right now for judging? Do you look to anybody, or you're just like, I don't pay attention?
I mean, I pay attention to it. I really like watching when Robbie Nishida judges, because I kind of grew up watching him drive, and he's a very nice person. And when he's a judge, like at FD Japan or occasionally at FD here, like, I always enjoy like seeing his calls, because I feel like my calls kind of fall in line with the way he thinks.
No, Robbie's awesome.
Yeah, so I'd say him for sure.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Go drive. This is his SC300. He's had it for years. It's 1JZ. Go have fun. Why is it muddy?
Because I had fun yesterday.
All right. Have fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
And a reminder, Naoki Nakamura will be at Drift Week 7, and we're going to have some public dates so you can come hang out, meet and greet with him, ride in his drift car if you'd like. That's February 18th and 19th at Musselman Honda Circuit in Arizona, and February 25th and 26th at Adams Motorsport Park over in California. So if you're a huge fan of him, come on out, see him in person. That's it, guys.